My name is Bill Griffin. I'm the VP of Financial Affairs for FLAPA. I'm also the VP of Facilities and Plant Operations for OCAMIC at the University of Florida. I'm here to introduce these two fine gentlemen who are going to be speaking for the next 45 minutes or so. Brett Bahr, is that right? Bahr, thank you. Brett Bahr serves as a senior account executive at Sourcewell, helping colleges and universities in the state of Florida empower their purchasing efforts. With a background in higher education, Brett is committed to building strong partnerships and advancing Sourcewell's mission of being a force multiplier, streamlining procurement for colleges and universities. And Bill Roth, president and CEO of Roth IAMS and co-founder of SLAM. Is that a basketball thing?
No, SLAM Technologies, yeah.
SLAM Technologies is a visionary leader at the forefront of integrated asset management. Through 3 decades of collaborating with public and private sector clients across North America and millions of square feet assessed, Bill's expertise gives some unique insight into the field of facility and infrastructure asset management. Gentlemen, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Bill.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Good morning. Hope you're enjoying the conference. I know I definitely am. I'm excited to be here to talk about future-ready facilities, preparing for the next decade. Since he already kind of responded or had the introductions, again, I support colleges and universities down here in the state of Florida. So if your institution is looking for or has purchasing needs, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Be happy to help. I'll allow Bill to introduce himself and our gentleman who couldn't make it today.
Yeah, you'll see in the middle here, unfortunately, Troy Rogers was going to come and co-present with us today from Valencia College, and he didn't have a good headshot, so we decided to just get a little creative with his headshot and replace him with Roy Rogers, who apparently his father was actually not that Roy Rogers, but Roy Rogers, and had a chance to meet that Roy Rogers at one point in time. So it was going to be a great story for Troy to tell, but unfortunately his son was sick this morning and he had to take him to the doctor. So I'm going to fill in for Troy. I almost said Roy. If I call him Roy, please don't tell him, although I guess I'm being recorded, so he'll hear it forever. But please don't tell Troy if I do that. But I will fill in for what Troy was going to share. Some of the slides will feel a little awkward because they were written for Troy to say, not me, but please just bear with me. I'll do my best to represent Troy and the team at Valencia as best I can. And again, I'm Bill Roth. You heard about me from the other Bill before. So let's dive right in.
All right. Sounds good. So here's the agenda of what we're going to be discussing today. I'm going to be talking from a perspective of Sourcewell and cooperative purchasing, and we're going to dive into using cooperative contracts and how they utilized, Valencia College utilized the Sourcewell contract with Roth IAMS for their project. And then we're going to dive into the case study with Valencia and the work that Bill and his company has been doing with Valencia. And then we'll talk more about how to get most out of that process, tie it all back into the cooperative procurement, and hopefully have some questions and answers at the end. But it's a small room, not very many people in here, so if you do have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can make this engaging. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about using cooperative contracts and who Sourcewell is. So first and foremost, Sourcewell is a unit of government. We're located in the state of Minnesota. We're a trusted partner of government, education, and nonprofit agencies. We've been doing this for close to 50 years. Our job is simple. We support public agencies so they can support their key stakeholders, their communities, their campuses, their students and faculty. One of the solutions we use to support those public agencies is cooperative purchasing. Are you all familiar with cooperative purchasing or have experience with it? Well, that's great. I'll provide a little bit more background on just kind of what it is by definition and how we satisfy that. So by definition, cooperative purchasing is procurement by or on behalf of one or more public agencies. More simple terms, we do the heavy lifting for you. So we make that process of purchasing goods and services easier, better, more affordable. We do this by combining the purchasing power of, we have over 50,000 registered agencies, participating agencies with Sourcewell. So we satisfy that need for a competitive bid by your institution by doing that RFP process for you, taking that off your plates, that administrative burden, streamline that procurement process. some of the benefits regarding that, I would say the biggest difference when Sourcewell does cooperative procurement versus, let's say, a state contract. Are you all familiar with state contracts? So that's cooperative purchasing, right? The state has gone out and done procurement on behalf of the state. It's communities, it's districts, it's colleges and universities all have access to those state contracts. That's cooperative purchasing. When Sourcewell does it, we do it on behalf of the entire country. So you can imagine the volume that goes through a Sourcewell contract generally and oftentimes is substantially higher than what can go through a state contract. So it opens up opportunities. It allows for national level suppliers to provide goods and services for your local communities, your schools, often through local dealer networks and oftentimes at a reduced rate because we're using those economies of scale. I'm going to talk a little bit about specific data and some numbers with cooperative purchasing here in the state of Florida and then cooperative purchasing in general. So look at this trend here over a 10-year period, going back to 2018 through 2028. It's almost tripled in terms of the sales trend forecast. So public agencies are using cooperative purchasing. We're seeing that. These typical bar charts, you'll see a dip during the COVID years. We actually saw an increase. That had a lot to do with PPE and accessibility to those things. Public agencies found cooperatives were a very easy tool to use and to provide those services. So looking more specifically at colleges and universities, we have over 3,000 registered colleges and universities with our cooperative purchasing program, 106 specifically in Florida, and just last year utilized a total of 145 different supplier contracts with Sourcewell. Florida ranks number 3 overall in the country for overall cooperative purchasing use with Sourcewell specifically. In Sourcewell specifically, going back to this previous slide, $79.8 billion last fiscal year in cooperative purchasing spend on a national scale. Sourcewell was about $12.5 billion of that number. So looking at higher ed specifically within that vertical, we were around $838 million in reported spend last year with higher ed accounts, $124 million of that in Florida specifically. Now we have over 1,000 awarded contracts at Sourcewell across a variety of category areas. Roth IAMS happen to be one of those awarded suppliers, and we have 11 others attending this conference this week. So through a variety of areas, not just facilities, we provide contracts in office technology, fleet, public safety, parks, recreation, many more. So Bill's going to talk more about his project with Valencia specifically and dive into kind of the meat of this presentation today. And we'll tie it up at the end.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Brett. And yeah, this is where I'm going to pretend to be Troy. So bear with me as I introduce, and I will probably read a couple of these slides a little bit more because I was Troy had put these together for us. But a little bit about Valencia College. So and I was really shocked by this. Valencia College has between 45 and 50,000 students attending their school, and I mean I knew they were big, but I had really no idea that they were that big. Over 140 programs, 94% placement rate, and they're within the top 50 in size for degree granting colleges and universities across the country. 40% of the students pay nothing out of pocket for tuition or fees, and 50% of the students are first generation post-secondary students. So great in terms of providing accessibility to those that have maybe not had the opportunity for higher ed in the past. One of the most interesting parts of Valencia College is, although it's there's a lot of students and it's got a reasonably efficient footprint, they have 10 different locations. So there's about 51 buildings, but there's 10 different sites. There's 7 or 8 campuses and then a couple of just single facility locations. So from an asset management perspective, this presents a fairly significant challenge compared to just one large campus, right? Where everything is within walking distance and you're all in one place. And if you've ever tried to drive around Orlando when Disney World is open, which is 365 days a year, it's not that easy to get from place to place within Orlando. So a lot of unique challenges in terms of that distributed portfolio throughout the region and multiple districts as well. So that's just a little bit about the college. So I want to talk a little bit about the case study that we're going to go through today. And if there was anybody that was in my earlier presentation, we talked about the integration of capital planning and maintenance planning. This presentation is really going to focus on the capital planning side of things, because we're going to talk about a facility condition assessment program that we did for Valencia. So not so much on the maintenance side. We'll get into that a little bit on the next steps, but we're going to move a little bit further upstream than the previous presentation. I think I see a few familiar faces in here. So where we started the program, and so this is really these are really what were the goals. What were we doing before? What was Valencia doing before, and what did we want to try to evolve and change? And so a lot of it was based on the experience of the Valencia staff, right? Which is, how many people here have like 15, 20-year people who know your buildings inside and out? How many of those people are within 5 to 10 years of retirement? Right? So that's a huge challenge for not just the higher ed sector or K-12 sector, but the entire public infrastructure sector. There's a lot of institutional knowledge that resides in the heads of folks that are one lottery ticket win or a few years away from retirement, and is a huge risk if that knowledge walks out the door. Because if you've got somebody brand new in there, they don't know where all the dirty laundry is hidden. So Valencia really wanted to get at that institutional knowledge, get it institutionalized into a data set and out of people's heads. So that was one of their big priorities, because they, like all of you, had that demographic issue. A lot was reactive, right? When it breaks, we fix it. What's the problem with that? Exactly, right? It costs more money. It's a panic. It's whoever's got the piece of equipment you need as quick as you can find it. It's disruptive to operations. And somehow we're all underfunded, but we always find money to spend 3 times as much to fix it when it breaks, right? So how do we try to move from reactive to trying to get out in front of some of those things, not just to minimize disruption, but also to minimize cost? It was really an annual funding plan. How much money do we think we're going to get? What do we think we need to do? Let's put together a plan that makes sense. So how can we find a better way to make our decisions? So how we connected, and again, this was sort of more of a Troy slide, so bear with me based on the content, but basically we had the opportunity to meet with the Valencia folks at actually FEFBA initially, but the second meeting where really things started to take off was actually at FLAPA. At a FLAPA conference. I think it was the first conference that we came here 3 years ago. So there is a FLAPA connection to this relationship. And Valencia went through, they did a market scan, they did interviews, they did research on a bunch of folks. A lot of it was tied to the Sourcewell contract. So there are multiple, we have a Sourcewell contract, as Brett said, for facility assessment and planning services, but there are multiple vendors on that contract. So Valencia went through and did a market scan and brought in a bunch of senior leadership from beyond the facilities department and from the finance side of things as well, which I think is really important, like in terms of a lesson here, and I'll circle back to this at the end. But you really want to engage beyond just facilities in making a decision like this, because everything that comes out of a facility condition assessment is about capital renewal planning and funding. And so getting financial folks involved, getting folks from the board involved, getting folks from key programs involved can really be helpful, because if they know what they're getting, they should perceive more value in it if you make them part of the decision-making process. So what did we do? We did facility condition assessments on, as I said, 51 buildings, 2.3 million square feet, which is not a huge portfolio, but remember, this is spread out over 10 sites. Right? This was a very different program than if we just came into one campus and assessed 51 buildings. These buildings were all built at different times, different design standards. Like usually on a campus, there's some consistency in design and everything else. No, these are totally different campuses. We also looked at surface infrastructure. So roads, walkways, parking lots, fencing, things like that, site lighting. This is something that a lot of higher ed institutions kind of don't typically include. They just look at their facilities, like what's inside the 4 walls. Thing is that on big campuses, there are tens, hundreds, and sometimes billions of dollars of infrastructure that are supporting the campus that need money. Now it's hidden, right? Especially the underground stuff, right? The roads are a little easier, right? People don't like potholes, they see that. But the underground stuff, Valencia hasn't done that yet, but that's an area that can easily get forgotten. And when that fails, usually really bad things happen, right? Like It's, if something happens in a building shuts down. If your main electrical feed to your campus shuts down, everybody's going home, right? So there's a risk management piece to that. Valencia, for the first phase, looked at the surface to get a handle on that. But subsurface is also something to consider and remember. At the start of the program, Valencia kind of went all in. They said, look, we need to get this information on all of our buildings because we need to have a consistent data set across the board, across all of these campuses. Because as you can imagine, from one campus to another, if you send a little bit more money to this campus than that campus, it can cause potentially some small p political, oh, why did that campus get more money than me, or whatever the case is, right? So they wanted to get have everybody singing from the same song sheet. But we recommended, and we recommend to everybody who's getting started on this, whether you've never done it before, as was the case really with, I think Valencia had done it a long time ago with a previous leadership team, but not in a long time, and they weren't using the data. So whether you're starting or restarting a program, start with a pilot, right? We picked one campus, I can't remember which one it was, had like 4 buildings. So a relatively small campus, but we put the whole thing through the sausage maker, right? Start to finish, get that done for one campus, get a representative set of buildings. What it allows you to do is test all your assumptions, right? Hey, if you're doing this with in-house staff, maybe you don't need to do that because it's in-house resources, but I would stay still, do the pilot, whether it's in-house or third-party resources, so that you make sure that what you thought you were asking for was actually what you got, right? It's a whole lot easier to fix something after 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings than it is to go do 51 and go, oh man, I wish we woulda. Or, you know what? We didn't really need that. That was kind of a waste of money, right? It's a lot easier to figure that out after 3, 4, 5 buildings and then go back, pick up data if you add, or just drop that data for the rest of the buildings than it is to do it all and go, oh man, right? So start with a pilot. If you need to make course corrections around the scope of work, because you want to make sure you're getting the data set that you need. And you want to try to set that up front if you can. But as we all know, sometimes what we think we want isn't what we want until we see what we get, right? It also gave the team at Valencia a chance to go back to the senior leadership and say, hey guys, here's what we told you we were going to get. Here's what we got. Here's how we can use it. Does that make sense? So even though, so a lot of times we'll contract, and this is the nice thing about Sourcewell as well, we'll contract a pilot only, right? So we'll say, hey, in this case, we contracted the whole thing. We just did a pilot, and it was sort of a stage gate for the whole project. But oftentimes with others, we'll just do a pilot, 2 or 3 buildings, right? It minimizes cost, it minimizes the commitment. You would never go to an RFP for 2 to 3 buildings. It would cost you more to do the RFP than it would cost you to actually do the assessment. But with Sourcewell, we can sit down and just negotiate really quick and easy. Hey, pick the buildings, let's figure out a scope of work. That's the other nice thing about using the cooperatives as well, is if you issue an RFP, you and I are separated by a big giant concrete wall with a little tiny hole in the middle. And that's not at all a criticism of the procurement process, but in that methodology, there is very little collaboration and communication that can happen. We can ask questions that can maybe lead you to change things, but with a cooperative, we can sit down, and this is what we did with Valencia. We sat down at the boardroom table and said, okay, what do you want to do, right? And we tailored a scope of work that we would have never been able to build for them because we don't know enough about their business. We are an outside third party. We don't know enough about their business to know exactly what they want. And they're not experts in this field, so they could never have articulated specifically what they wanted exactly to get a clear, comparable public RFP. But because the Sourcewell agreement allowed us to collaborate and cooperate, hence cooperative procurement, we were able to tailor a scope of work that wasn't generic, that they pulled off from another college's public RFP for FCAs, or something they found online, or something they made up based on what they knew. We co-created and collaborated to build that scope of work. So we took that data and we put it into software that's going to allow them to visualize and report on the data. And the key thing here is that we're all facilities folks, right? We probably love facilities. We understand facilities. Most of us love data, right? Any data nerds in the house? Only 3, 4? Okay, all right. Well, okay, you're my people. You're all my people, but I'm a data nerd too. So the thing about data though is we data nerds love to get lost in the data. Most of the people that write the checks that fund our buildings, they don't care about the data. So how do we take this big giant data set, right? I think Valencia's got 5,000 lines of data from the condition assessments that we did, plus or minus. That's a lot of information. There's a lot of really good meat in there for facilities folks to sink their teeth into, but the board doesn't care. The executives don't care. They want to know the big picture, right? Take all this data, visualize it for me, tell me a story that I can use to try to help you find more money, right? The data soup, don't get me wrong, the data is the foundation, but if you go barf a bunch of data all over a bunch of finance folks or a bunch of educators or a bunch of board members that aren't facilities folks, you're going to lose them. So how do you take that data and tell a story, right? And that's really what we look to do with the tool set that we brought forward. So where are we now? So all of the facilities have been assessed. So Valencia has the data. They had a multi-year, they had put together, for those in the higher ed sector, you know that the colleges and universities got a bit of an influx of money just after COVID. So they had a plan that they were executing based on that funding that came down from BOG. It was 400 million for colleges, plus or minus. So that plan has now sort of run its course, and now they're building out their next plan, and they're using this data instead of sitting around a table going, who's crying the loudest, or what do we think needs to get done? They now have a data set in front of them to go, okay, here is a list of needs. Now, really important thing to remember, an FCA is not a capital plan, right? An FCA is a list of needs, right? A capital plan says, I have $10 million to spend, and here's what I'm gonna do for my $10 million. An FCA is a list of needs that's probably 5 to 10x your annual capital funding. So you have to remember, if you're getting an FCA, you're not getting a capital plan. There's another step. Because as a third party, I can't tell you, hey, there's 3 rooftop units you have to replace. You only have enough money to replace 2. You should do these 2. Because there's business reasons. That's a decision that I can make in collaboration with you, but I have no right to to tell you and decide how you spend your money. So you need to have a methodology to go from a list of needs to a capital plan. Just finished what we call a multivariable prioritization workshop a couple of days ago, which is going to help support their future capital plans. When you get a list of needs and you're just dealing, again, it's not a capital plan. You need to decide what you do and what you defer. And the MVP gives you a numerical priority to allow you to decide, hey, based on a set of criteria that's important to Valencia College, here is what, when we're just down to deferred capital renewal and maintenance issues, here's what we should do based on what we've collectively decided are priorities for the institution. So Valencia College's MVP is dramatically different than Florida A&M's MVP, is different than Palm Beach's MVP. It's what's important to you as an organization. So we're working with Valencia now to bring that layer to the data analysis. So where are we going? They have all this data now. They're looking to prioritize it. They're looking to implement it into their planning, which means that they're going to start completing projects. And so we're looking to develop their data management strategy, which is really focused on how do we keep this data up to date? Because even now, since we finished the assessments, they've done some work. So their data set is out of date because they haven't reconciled, oh, we replaced that roof, we replaced that parking lot. We need to get going building that strategy. The prioritized multi-year capital plan, again, instead of that 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, let's build a prioritized multi-year plan. The benefit of building a multi-year plan is if stuff happens, you can move things forward and backwards a lot easier. When you only have a 1 year plan and all of a sudden another $1 million falls in your lap from somewhere, you're just kind of scramble for what's the first thing you can find to spend the money on. Whereas, hey, look, I've got a whole plan for next year. What's my highest priority year 2 project? Let's bring that forward, as an example. Or if you defer something, you have somewhere to send it. Oh, look, this roof cost an extra $1 million. I'm going to push my lowest priority project down to next year, and it becomes my highest priority project in year 2. So that's the benefit of the multi-year plan. And for those that attended my session this morning on the Holy Grail, the integration of capital and maintenance planning, we are looking on how can we integrate this data set with their O&M planning. So how to get the most out of the process. So I'm going to talk from the perspective of the FCA process, and Brett is going to jump in with how to leverage cooperative contracts more beneficially. So I mentioned this earlier. So gathering data is not cheap, right? But in our opinion, you should look at it as an investment. And how do you get the most out of your investment, right? You engage senior leadership early, right? Make sure everybody that's involved, as much as you can, everybody that's involved in the funding of your facilities, in the planning of your facilities, in the usage of your facilities, is at least aware of what you're doing, right? So that they can have input, because then it's not your program, it's our program. And when the data comes out of it, there's at least an awareness and hopefully a higher level of trust. You want to get people involved. You want to get your staff involved as well, not just senior leadership, but all of your staff. What background information exists, right? What drawings are sitting under somebody's table? What report from 5 years ago is under somebody's desk? How do we get our arms around all of that? How do we get those staff interviews? If we don't have the opportunity to do staff interviews, that institutional knowledge never ends up in the data set, and it can still walk out the door with the lottery win or the retirement or whatever else. It takes time, right? But you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. On-site escorts during the assessments are extremely helpful, because if we walk in this room and let's say there's a leaky roof, I know this is not probably a realistic scenario, but let's say there's a leak in this roof and they replaced that block of tiles yesterday, right? If I walk in here to do an assessment, I look up, those tiles look brand new. Look at that. No problems, right? If somebody's here that goes, yeah, that's because I just replaced them yesterday and I have to replace them every 6 months, now I know there's a problem, right? Invest the time to let the staff who know stuff get involved in the methodology, and review your draft data. A lot of people just pass stuff through, but there are times when our teams have to make assumptions on dates of construction and dates of installation and things like that. If there's somebody who knows that, there's somebody who knows all the good, the bad, and the ugly, you want to make sure you get them involved, because they will make those adjustments, and some of those adjustments can be material. And you want to get the most consistent, defensible data. And the last thing you want to do is have somebody who wasn't involved look at the data 10 minutes later and go, oh, that was 2005, not 2015. This data is garbage, when if they just had a chance to look at it, they would have changed it, and now the data set would be great because they'd own the data, right? So put the greatest effort into the pilot, right? The pilot is your chance. If you always do a pilot, and when you do a pilot, put the most time into the pilot, because the more time you invest in the pilot, the less time you'll have to invest down the road, because you work out all the kinks. So I don't know, Brett, if you want to add anything from a cooperative perspective?
Yeah, I love the analogy that you used about a concrete wall with a hole. I've never heard that before. But it does put things into perspective, because when your department or your area has a need and it's above threshold, your school will probably have to go out to bid for it, or possibly use a state contract, knowing that cooperative contract is readily available, and it does provide choice for you. So in this particular situation, you met with Troy or whoever from Valencia at an event, like FLAPA or whatever. Chances are they didn't even interact with anybody from Sourcewell. It was a relationship between you two. And the contract was available for them to use. It provided them choice. They know they wanted to use a Roth or work with Roth on this, and they didn't, procurement would say, well, we got to go out for bid. And you say, well, wait a minute. We know of this contract that's available. We know we want to use Roth. Let's use this. And so that opens up that opportunity for them. They're getting what they need. They don't have to take the lowest bid, right? Which may be a requirement at some institutions, which you're familiar with as suppliers. Now, sometimes schools have to go out to bid. That's just plain and simple. Some of the big schools that I speak to and talk to, they say, well, we're going to get our best value if we go out to bid it ourselves. And I do hear that a lot. But what this provides is that value proposition is saving that time. And that's what we're constantly out there, what I'm trying to do to educate procurement offices around this part of the country and other parts of the country is You don't have to do that. I understand if it's a requirement, for your institution, but it's not something they would have to do because we follow that same strict guidelines that their procurement office has to follow. Other things too, in terms of what's available and what's out there, just encourage you to educate yourself. We traditionally start in the procurement office. That seems to be the central location that we talk to, that we do the most education with, is procurement teams. But we're starting to do more end user education. We're attending events like this. We're attending recreation athletic events. We're attending fleet events in other areas. So for the most part, we're working with procurement. The conversation starts there because they have their hands in everything. But we're trying to do more education on the facilities front. And so the more you know, the more resources you have, the more support you have. When you do have to bring things forward to procurement, hey, by the way, we heard about this contract that's already been bid and it's already available. Are you aware of it? Sometimes procurement is not aware of it. So just something for you to know, and appreciate Bill double dipping today and doing 2 presentations and providing some context around his project with Valencia and how they utilized the contract with us just to do that pilot. And I'm glad you brought that up. It was a quick project, something that was ready to go, and it expanded into a full-blown project. So thank you for coming. I don't know.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll build on what you said, Brett, about time, and I'll just tell another quick story from the state of Florida here, since I think we still have a few minutes left, and then we'll get to questions. But and I've spoken at other conferences about this, so I know I can talk about it from the client's perspective because they've been on stage with me. But in the summer of 2023, the school district of Palm Beach County decided to move their bond referendum up from 2026 to 2024. And so the CFO went to Dave Dolan, who is the chief facilities officer, and said, you have 6 months to give us a 10-year forecast of capital renewal needs for our 28 million square foot, 180 school portfolio. I won't tell you what Dave's internal monologue said inside his head, but Dave just happened to be attending a conference that I was speaking at and came up to me afterwards and said, hey, let's go get a coffee, and laid it out for me and said, what can I do? And the first thing I said is, well, you probably couldn't procure any solution to this in the 6 months that you have to find a solution to this. But have you heard of Sourcewell? And they had, and they're a fairly prolific user of it. So again, same sort of thing with Valencia, right? I could have never figured out what Dave needed without Dave, and Dave could have never figured out what Dave needed without me. And so within about 72 hours, we developed the scope of work. Within about 3 days after that, we had a contract set up where we did a desktop modeling exercise, because there's no way we could have done what we did for Valencia in 6 months. There's just no way. We could have done it. We could have blitzed the school district with like 50 people, and they would have never been able to keep up. It would have just been garbage information. They wouldn't have been able to give us people to interview. They wouldn't have been able to review the data. We could have done it, but it would have been worthless, and it would have cost a lot of money. So we built out essentially a pilot where we went in, we modeled all the data from a desktop perspective, we projected out the capital renewal needs, we did a pilot on 2 schools, 15 buildings, I think it was, to show what the other data would be, and we were able to satisfy all the requirements of the bond. I was talking to the CFO, I was talking to the bond rating agencies, so what we gave them was, it wasn't perfect data, but it was perfect data that you could get on a portfolio that size in 6 months. It was good enough to take to the electorate. They got the $2 billion bond passed in 2024. As I said before, the moral of that story is they could not have procured a solution to that problem through traditional methods in the time that they had, let alone procure it and get a solution. So, it's sometimes about cost, it's sometimes about preference, but a lot of times it's just, I need something quick. That was the same thing Brett mentioned during COVID, right? I need PPE quick. Who has a contract that I can use? So there's tons of benefits to Sourcewell. If you're not familiar or your procurement people aren't familiar, I'll give Brett and his team huge props. We often I'm not a procurement person. I can sort of speak procurement, but Sourcewell, that's their job. So anytime someone from procurement starts asking questions, Sourcewell provides us as contract holders, reps who can have those conversations. They're there to help not us get a contract, but to help you understand the methodology, make sure it works with you, make sure it ticks all your boxes and goes from there. So I just thought I'd share one other story since we had a few minutes. Any questions for either Brett or I about either the cooperative methodology or the work that we did at Valencia? And again, once again, I apologize that Troy wasn't here. He would have really liked to be here, but he does send his regrets.
So in your Valencia example,
Yep.
you reference a lot of capital, CIP type of work.
Yep.
In your asset strategy, do you also look at burning the candle at both ends, if you will? Because, we've got the capital CIP work over here that you budgeted, but you also gathered data on brand new and middle ground stuff. Like you said, it's going to break.
Yep.
So if you got 3 that are going to break, and you don't have money for 2, so you're focusing on basically the big picture as opposed to capital. Is that all included?
Yeah, so the work and the scope of a condition assessment can vary from like a time-limited assessment where you say, hey, give me information on what I need to do in the next 10 years. And then there's more of a full element level inventory, which is where you look at everything in the building, whether it's brand new or whether it's 100 years old. And so in this case, we assessed everything in the portfolio. So we would have given a remaining useful life to every element. So you have everything from past life to nearing life to lots of life left, which allows you to kind of look not only in the short term, but also in the long term to determine, okay, it's really important we understand what we need to do in the next 3 to 5 years, but what does the year 6 to 10 look like? Does it drop off? Does it ramp up? So we're trying to balance both a near-term focus with a longer-term vision and strategy. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Other questions or comments?
Around membership, partnership with Sourcewell, how does that work?
So honestly, I find it very hard to find a school or school that I'm working with that isn't already registered with our program. I can say every school that's in attendance at this event, I check the attendee list is registered with our program. So you already have an identifying number. Your procurement office would be aware of that. So as long as you're registered to participate in our program, you can utilize our contracts, assuming it meets your procurement criteria and the rules that are set in place by the state of Florida. But judging by the usage and utilization in Florida, it's a very friendly cooperative purchasing state. It's not all the same around the country. There actually are states that are very resistant to cooperative purchasing based on government rules and political things. But Florida is very friendly and has been utilizing our contracts.
Yeah, I think an important note too is you don't pay anything to use our contract. The Sourcewell is paid by us as a percentage of the contracts that we negotiate. So it costs you nothing to use a Sourcewell contract either, because that's a question we always get is how much do we pay for this? Well, I mean, inadvertently you pay through us, but you're not out of pocket anything beyond what the contract is. And because of the buying power, I can't say that this is true for every Sourcewell contract holder, but the best prices we offer the market are through our Sourcewell contract because we can sit down and have those discussions. And it's a lot easier for us to contract than to write the 400-page RFP and we win 30% of them or whatever it is, right? So we're able to offer some cost savings there that we wouldn't through traditional procurement methods.
Thanks for bringing that up. Those economies of scale, right? Those 50,000 plus agencies we have registered with Sourcewell. So you're a supplier, let's say, you respond to one of our RFPs, you're awarded. I see some awarded suppliers in the room. You now have access to our 50,000 registered agencies that are with Sourcewell. Instead of, you responded to one RFP, and now you can do work with over 50,000 agencies around the country instead of having to do individual RFPs.
Yeah, not a question, but a comment. This is my 3rd year coming to Flappa at this year, and really just want to say thank you for being here. It was kind of new to this role a few years back, and every vendor, like from the vendor side of things, every vendor that I had, I was like, oh my gosh, I was big and I'm excited. And then I asked, like, well, we deal very much with Sourcewell. Yeah, and actually, are you guys going to just look at me? Like, I've never heard of it.
Right.
I'm like, well, if you want to try to do business with us, I'm just telling you, it's the easiest possible way for me to pick up a phone and buy a crack from you. You want to sell me a
That should be your motto.
Yeah, right. You want to sell me a service, you want to sell me a thing, whatever it is, it's made it easy for me to do it.
Yeah.
And the first question is, are you doing Sourcewell, or I'm sure there's a couple other ones, but yeah, that's our go-to.
Yeah.
And that's what our purchasing department likes, and it makes it everybody's playing on the same, team. It's, everything's open and transparent and all that good stuff. So thank you for being here as much for us, but also to hopefully kind of open the eyes of some vendors, and be able to share what you can offer. Because I don't know that side of it, but I gotta assume that, access to 50,000 people for 50,000 institutions.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. We appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
I call it our version of the Willy Wonka golden ticket, right, for us, because if I was here without it, every conversation I would have with everybody is, that's great, but we have to go to RFP, right? And the fact that literally 80% of our work across the US is through Sourcewell contracts, because we can sit down and mostly it's because we can sit down and negotiate a scope of work that actually works. Because most people, and I'm not sure if there's any people out here that have done, condition assessments year over year over year, but most of you guys aren't experts in that field. You don't know exactly, you know what you want, but you don't know how to ask to get it. And so just the ability to sit down and go, hey, let's you tell us, we'll translate, we'll do a pilot to make sure that we were speaking the same language, and now let's go actually get you what you want. So much easier than 37-line scope of work in a public RFP and trying to interpret and all the rest of it. So
Yeah, I see pretty much the same vendors, most years, and that's the conversation. Oh yeah, we talked last Slappa, but they'll ask me, and I'm like, or they'll share with me, it never went anywhere.
Yep.
Well, put you in touch with our purchasing department and all that, but it's if you're Sourcewell, we've probably already done business with you. I like the product, I put you in contact with whoever, and it made it easy. But for the people who I see, I like it, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's because they're not Sourcewell.
yeah, look for the orange flags. There's a bunch of them around the exhibit hall. And again, this is my 5th FLAPA. We've had a Sourcewell flag since day one, and I think we were the only ones the first year, so it's really good to see more and more coming. And then actually, it wasn't at FLAPA, but we actually had one of our competitors. We had 2 flags at one show, and they stole one because they didn't have one, and they would never admit that they stole it, but they didn't have it on the first day, and on the second day, my second flag disappeared, and they had one on their desk, so I'm pretty sure he stole it. But it's a great way to identify it, and again, as I continue to go to more APA shows at the local, regional, and national level, there's more and more Sourcewell flags popping up. And I mean, if you have a contract and you don't have a flag, you're kind of dumb. So hopefully everybody who's
That should be called tactical procurement.
there, yes, exactly. Nice.
Yeah.
What's the, you said you're not a big setup, what's the ownership structure, privately held, for profit, what's the?
We're a unit of government. We're actually a local unit of government in the state of Minnesota. We were established as a service cooperative back in the 1970s, servicing our 5-county area in central Minnesota. And in the 1990s, we were granted the legal authority through the state of Minnesota to provide a cooperative purchasing program. And by being a government agency, we're structured a little bit different. We have our board of directors who we report to. They're a group of local elected officials that manage our organization. And through that cooperative purchasing program, obviously we bring in a revenue every year, and as part of that, we're required to give back to our 5-county area in Minnesota, but also through national organizations. We're major partners with NIGP, with NAEP. These are procurement organizations, but groups like APA are now becoming very involved. So in terms of our structure, in comparison, there are other cooperatives out there. You may have heard of like Omnia Partners, E&I, NASPO, some of those others. So we are different because we are a unit of government versus like, I can't really speak for the others, but I know that some are for-profit, some are non-profit, and they use a lead agency model when it comes to procurement, where we use a government-based procurement model. So we do all of our own procurement. We have our own award-winning procurement team that does all of it. So just like your procurement office on your campus that does all the RFP, we have a team at Sourcewell that does all of it. So very busy group, very recognized group. We've actually, in fact, we've been a lead agency for other cooperatives. They've adopted our contracts to use for themselves. But we have those same strict guidelines that public agencies have to follow because of our government status. So yeah.
And I've seen, and again, just speaking from the business partner side of things, that has been a big difference when we've talked to a number of folks, particularly folks that aren't familiar with Sourcewell or cooperatives and haven't used it a lot. The .gov web address has a huge upside because they're one of us. They're not a for-profit. They're not this or that. So where we've introduced Sourcewell to some organizations, we've gotten the feedback that is a differentiator for Sourcewell versus some of the other cooperatives out there. So I'll just kind of put that out there as promo for you guys because we've heard that is okay, cool.
Yep.
That all of a sudden the shields go down or the defenses go down a little bit.
Yeah. And some I don't know, some recent news if you're a supplier may affect you too, but in the last year or so we've adopted an intergovernmental service agreement with the United States military. So now we've become a purchasing arm for many Army, Navy installations around the country. So they operate just like small cities. They have needs. So non-combat related procurement can go through Sourcewell now. We now have employees actually at these bases working on behalf of Sourcewell, providing our goods and services and our contracts for those installations. So it's only going up, only increasing in terms of our just popularity, but also organizational growth and the amount of people that are going to be working for us. And I think that's going to result in more contracts, obviously, more contracts that you will have access to as procurement officials and facilities directors at your schools.
Yeah, when we got our contract in 21, I think there was 450 contracts, and I think you said there's about 1,000 now. Right?
Yeah, we have over 1,000.
So in 5 and a bit years, they've doubled the number of contracts. So I mean, obviously, ours is facility assessment and planning services, but there's lots of other product services, construction, everything else out there. Check it out. Like if you're on the educational side of things, there's got to be something there that you can use.
Yeah.
Probably lots of things.
I always say everything from paper clips to airport runways and everything in between.
Yeah.
Heavy
Now
equipment
tanks
construction.
and-
Yeah, sorry.
Well, folks, in the interest of time, if there's any other questions, Brett and I, I'm sure, are happy to stick around and answer them. But I think we've even gone a couple minutes long. But thank you so much for your time, for your attention. I hope this added value to your day.